Hi, Fems. Happy Wednesday. I am Violette de Ayala. I'm the founder of FemCity, and you're joining us for our Wednesday Wisdom Series. We meet here every Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and talk about really great things, in-depth conversations. I always find our in-depth conversations continue after we stop recording, so we're thinking about maybe doing like an after show segment as well. We always love kind of chatting in the green room after these are over. If you are joining us live, we encourage you and welcome you to add comments, share your aha moments, ask questions. If you're watching this in the library or in the replay months from now, we are still here for you. Please feel free to always join the conversation. Our collective and collaborative intention and energy is set to help you on this journey of creating your own business. So if we can give anything more to you, please let us know. We are here for you. You can message any of us here and we will respond. So let's go ahead and talk about the topic for today. We're going to talk about how to show up authentically. And the reason why I thought this was a great conversation to have is because it's really hard sometimes to step into our own place. You know, we look to see what other people are doing, and then we kind of use their platform or their kind of look or their kind of branding for ourselves, and then things don't grow. Businesses kind of stay in that really low place, and we wonder what's happening. And I truly believe that when you step into that authentic place of being who you really are out in the real world, it really helps to get people to connect with you and then to drive business your way. And then, of course, more money in your pocket, which is very important for Fems. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to share with you action steps as well that you can take on. But let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to introduce to you these beautiful women who are part of our FemCity Global program. I get to work with them every day. I love them all. I just think they bring so much value to this world, and they have beautiful spirits as well. Let's go to Tammey. Tammey, share a little bit about who you are and why do you think it's important to talk about authentically showing up?
I love it. Violet, thank you so much for these Wednesday wisdom nuggets. They are fantastic. I'm Tammey Grable Woodford, and I am a FemCity Global member. I help entrepreneurs grow their business, get unstuck, and say goodbye to overwhelm, as well as break through those stubborn plateaus and belief barriers, so they can find their way to profitability. I also host my globally recognized podcast, Your Killer Life, which discusses all things breast cancer, as I am a 6-year survivor. And talk about being authentic. Cancer, frankly, was the catalyst for me taking my 25 years of executive experience and my master's in business and putting it to use, building a life I love and helping others do the same. And when it comes to authenticity, I have to tell you, for a while, I struggled with sharing that, really figuring out how to fit cancer into my narrative and into my story, because it is part of my life and it's a big part of why I made some changes. And, you know, when we choose to show up authentically, frankly, we're risking our very core selves, right? Because here's the challenge. When we show up authentically, we are exposing who we really are, the things that we believe most, the things that we hold dear. When we show up as someone else or as our curated or our adaptive selves based on who the media tells us we should be or social programming says we should be, or the expectations of what others tell us should or shouldn't be, we risk telling ourselves subconsciously and even consciously that our authentic self isn't enough, that we aren't okay, that we aren't likable, that we aren't lovable. So showing up authentically means that we truly get to know who we are, what we stand for, how we express ourselves, and do so honestly. And it means establishing and holding boundaries, which can lead to confrontation, which also means we have to embrace some vulnerability. So there's a lot of reasons why we can struggle to show up authentically and instead find comfort in that safe space of the curated version or adaptive self that is a bit of a buffer. So those are my thoughts.
Absolutely. You know what? I'm listening to you, Tammey, and I'm looking at all three of you, and I have seen you all step into that beautiful place with your own personal journeys, which is, I think, when I fell most in love with you, right? So I've known you guys for a while now, but every time I catch an Instagram video or a Facebook Live, or you share something when we're meeting in our kind of global program, little little bubble that we have, I have to say I have fallen more in love, like connected more deeply with you all. And so there is so much value in when you do show up, and it is very scary. It is very, very scary to show up that way. Let's go to Laurie. Laurie, if you can share a little bit about who you are and also that struggle to show up authentically. How does it hurt us?
Thanks, Violet. So I'm Laurie Hunt. I am also a very proud global member of FemCity, and I'm the founder of the More in Me movement. I created this initiative because I discovered over time that I continually had more in me and came to realize that and believe that every single person, every one of you, have more in you too. And so my goal is to help women take on big challenges. You know, the theme this year for International Women's Week was choose to challenge. And in doing that, how to get comfortable in discomfort. Because when we can get comfortable in discomfort, then it becomes something familiar, even though it's uncomfortable. And as I was thinking about this conversation today, you know, there's that being authentic can be uncomfortable. So how do we put ourselves out there? So I really love this topic, Violet. You had me doing some deep thinking when I woke up during the night a couple times. When I was growing up, I was criticized constantly. I was told I had to do this, I couldn't do that. And whatever I did, it was never good enough. It was never good enough. Like pretty much my whole life. This was coming from my mother and somewhat from my dad, but in the end, I didn't know who I was, and life was a struggle. In the grace conversation we had earlier this week, I talked about this book I read called Life Was, Life Wasn't Meant to Be a Struggle. And when I came across that book in my late 20s, you know, it was like, well, how can it not be a struggle? And it was, I realized, because I didn't know who I was. I knew all these things I was told to be, go get a business degree. I wanted a French degree. I wanted to spend, you know, the last 2 years in France, and I was paying for my own education, but for some reason I went and got a business degree, which, you know, in the end that all worked out well. I did well and had lots of cool experiences, but it wasn't me. The tech industry is like, I couldn't care less, but I spent 20 years there. So this idea of being authentic is about connecting in to who we are and then putting that person out. So, you know, like you said, Tammey, there's vulnerability, but also it's, you know, when you think of this discomfort and comfort, it's the most comfortable place to put ourselves out from. Because what else is there, right? But, you know, I always say, you know, connecting into your heart center. Yeah. So it's that, and I think I also have come to believe that life is a journey of discovering ourselves because we keep discovering more, right? Oh, look at me, I can climb a mountain, who knew, right?
I was thinking the first time I showed vulnerability when it comes to FemCity, and I know some of you may have heard this story already, but it was years ago, and we had just come up with our slogan, or I had just come up with our slogan, Business for Your Soul. And I announced it in a FemCity Raleigh event that Annie used to host once a year. It was an amazing event. It always had like just, you know, 100 women. It was fantastic. And I remember sharing that and being really scared, because it was putting us out there as to who we really are, right? So, and people have mentioned like FemCity is, you know, business, but with a little bit of woo or a little bit of spirituality. And I realized I just felt like to have that slogan would mean that those women that felt like we were all connected as one, that similar energies and how we all rise together. So I really wanted to make sure we had a slogan that captured that. And when I mentioned it in front of those 100 women, this one member said, wow, you're putting it all out there. Like the way she said, I was like, oh my gosh, did I make a mistake? Like, is this going to be like the end of FemCity? And the reality is that stepping into that place of authenticity made it so that those that got it. And those that didn't were like, you know what, this isn't for me. And that's okay too. But that was like my first time, really scary, putting it all out there. I know it sounds silly. It's just a slogan. but it was a really scary moment. So, and I go back to that every time I'm stepping into that place of being authentic. It's okay to step into that area. You might lose some people, but you might gain a really big bunch of people that totally get where you're coming from. So you made me think of that. Let's go to Julia Mae Hunt. Take it away. Share a little bit about who you are, Julia, and also how that authenticity, how does it hurt us, that struggle that we all go through?
Okay, so I am a social media and personal branding photographer, and I help entrepreneurs show up authentically online. So I help them, show their true selves, and so that pretty much leads me right into what I want to talk about, which is, there's one thing to be honest and share and be vulnerable. But it's important that it does come from that place of your true self. And so, for me, for a long time, people would say things to me like, "Oh, thank you for being so vulnerable." And I would think to myself, what did I just say? I don't know what I just said that was so vulnerable. So a lot of times I feel like maybe I don't even know how to not show up authentically. But there was a huge difference once I did a lot of personal work and was able to finally start finding my true self and expressing that really made a huge shift in just what I was attracting in my life. And so, just learning how to do that.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And that's why it's so important, because like Laurie just said, that where else do you come from, that feels more comfortable than your true self?
Yeah.
Than your authentic self.
Yeah. Beautiful. So we have some love that came through. Nicole says, such a fabulous panel. Love that life is such a journey. And she said, love talking authenticity, stepping into it, stepping into your light and your power. And that's the true, beauty of everything. I know all three of you know my backstory of being on welfare and food stamps and really struggling with certain aspects of my life decades ago. And I was scared to share that. I was so scared to share those stories because we go through those same things. What will people think about me? People will judge me. And it's really, you have to kind of change it and put your heart-centered, as Laurie mentioned, putting their heart-centered intention forward. Because when we share those aspects of us, there are so many other people that can relate to that. Even this, my husband and I being married for 20 years, then we got divorced, then we got married again. Good Morning America picking it up, which my husband, by the way, is like, no more PR. He's like, no more. I don't want to talk about us getting back together. I'm over it, and sharing it with others. But, I was scared about sharing that. I was so scared because most people didn't even know we had divorced. We had kind of gotten back together after 2 years. So I remember that so raw that I just putting myself out there, it's still quite uncomfortable, but it doesn't matter how uncomfortable it is. When I share authenticity in my personal story and showing up in that place, I get so many messages from people saying, I'm so glad you shared that because that's also me. Or that was someone I knew, or, there's so many of us going through very similar journeys, and it empowers other people to step into that light also and inspire others. It's kind of like this trickle effect. What is the number one tip? So we love sharing action steps when we're together. What is that number one tip that you can share for femmes that are really struggling? Perhaps they have that conversation, right? What will people think about me? How will people judge me? What words will they say? It's really more comfortable to be somebody else, right? Like, I like her branding, or I like the way she's talking. I'm just going to do that because that looks really good. And that's easy to do. What would you say to them in order for them to get into that place of authenticity, which we all agree, once you step into that level of authenticity, your opportunities will grow and blossom because you're connecting with people from that really true place of who you are. And people really love that, by the way. People really love real people that are speaking in that vulnerable state. So what's your tip, Tammey?
So I love what E.E. Cummings said, and that is that it takes courage to grow up and become who you really are. So my number one tip is to step into your courage. Work past that fear, step into your courage, and take the time to really get to know yourself. You've got to not just know yourself, but also maybe even forgive yourself and create daily practices, establish boundaries, right? It takes so much courage to establish boundaries that serve you and allow you to show up as the amazing person that you are. So courageously and unabashedly step into and love yourself. And it does take courage because there is that risk. So that's my number one tip. Step into your courage.
I love that. I wish I could do like exclamation points all over the place on that. And so some love came through. I'm just going to go ahead and highlight this really quick from Linda, another one of our FemCity Global members. For years, I was scared to share my story and have people judge me. Now I realize that everything I've experienced in my life, other women have also gone through. I am not alone. And I literally have chills reading that right now. And that's the power of women coming together, the power of us sharing our stories, and the power of us rising together. Let's go to Laurie. Laurie, what is your number one tip for those femmes that are really struggling in stepping into that place? Oh, you're on mute. Take it away.
I have to tell you this. I was talking to Ian about this panel, I think it was, and I mentioned heart-centered, and he said, well, are people going to know what that is? Here's a guy that came out of corporate tech industry for 30 years, right? I said, oh, yes, they will. So there you go. There's validation for business with soul. Building on what Tammey said around connecting in, like for me, my mother being so bossy all the time, didn't work. What she wanted for me, wasn't what I wanted for me. So we need to connect in. And when we connect in, we'll know. You get to feel that sense of grounded, connected energy. So that coming in from the outside doesn't work so well. We take input, but then we translate it through. And I also want to offer the idea that there's not just one part of ourselves. There are many selves that we have. We have this inner team. So for example, I have a playful, silly part. I have a, more serious, intellectual, researchy writer part of myself. There's an athlete part of myself. There's a chubby, smoking party girl. She's not so active anymore, but she's the one that grew out of that constant criticism and low self-esteem. There's the possibilitarian, anything's possible. There's a system disruptor who speaks up. What ties it all together is the circle of relationship we have with ourselves and our values. Our values, when we're speaking from that place, that is what's most authentically us, because that's what matters to us in the world. So for example, the value of equity is really big for me. My system disruptor helps with that one, speaks up, sometimes softly, sometimes loud. And I'm okay when it's not eloquent, because what matters to me is that I'm speaking up, because that value is so important. So this idea of connecting into all the parts of ourselves and not to try and be just one thing or one way, but get curious about all the different ways we're there. And I think for me, I find really getting clear on my values and letting that be a barometer for the actions I take, which is the other part, right? We need to have our who we're being and what we're doing being aligned. And that's where values are the connecting point between those two.
Beautiful. And I love that you shared that, because I know that you've stepped into that space even more so during the last 13, 15 months. And when we're more vocal about the inequalities, that's another trigger for many people to jump on that. And so I know, that was also like, where do you, and you stepped right into that. And FemCity, we were part of that. FemCity also, we had these conversations about, soulful conversations about racism and that whole segment. And we had a lot of hate email that came through, but we had much more love email that came through. So again, stepping into that place, authenticity, where you feel you need to be a voice, and being okay with the consequences, knowing that it's all going to be quite beneficial for those that need a voice. So I love that you shared that, because it reminded me so much of our time together during that series. So we had some love that came through. Linda said, FemCity has been a part of growing into authenticity. I love that. And then Sina says, boundaries are necessary and healthy. Find your courage. It's there. Know you're not alone. Reach out and ask for support. It's out there. Mostly believe in yourself and let it shine, which is very, very beautiful. Thank you so much for all that love. I'm reading it out because this will be in our podcast later on. So I'm reading it out for those that are not going to be watching this visually. Let's go to Julia. Julia, your final, your tip, your number one tip for those that are really struggling to be in that place.
So my number one tip is to remember how to play. Just experiment and play, and maybe you do try something that someone else is doing if it looks like fun to you. Play around with it and just see what happens. For me, it took a long time to remember how to play. I didn't know how to do that anymore. And so I actually had to practice. So again, it's mostly just getting out there and experimenting. And, I liked what Linda said too, that, being around FemCity, all the femmes, so surrounding myself with beautiful examples has really helped me grow into my authenticity too.
It's a long word.
It is.
I love that. You know what, Julia, it's funny that you say that you had to get back into a place of being playful, because we follow each other on Instagram, and I think that's one of the words that would come to mind. If someone said, what are 3 words about Julia that, playful would be one of them, because those are the ones that I love most. The videos that you do, the reels or the IG stories that you do when you are playful, those are my favorite ones of the content that you share. So it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was like, that's like literally what I think about when I think of that word. I think about you. And then that's a beautiful compliment. I mean that with a lot of love. It brings me so much joy.
Thank you.
So, all right. So we're wrapping up. Final advice, Tammey, and how can femmes find you, learn more about the work you're doing in this world?
Thank you so much. So after you take the courage, find your courage, embrace your courage to get to know yourself, the final advice is going to be to embrace yourself. Get comfortable with all of the uniqueness and awesomeness that's you, because honestly, that is your secret sauce. It is absolutely your secret sauce. And who you are, it's not just enough. It's what the world needs from you. It's why you're here. So definitely embrace yourself. Give yourself all that love. I love connecting with fellow entrepreneurs, whether I'm helping them grow or collaborating. The best place to find me is right where you found me. So if you're listening to the podcast or out on Facebook, social media is a great place. I'm also in the FemCity.com members directory as a global. If you're looking to put best business practices in place to accelerate your growth, let's connect. I've got an offer of a free 30-minute strategy call I would love to have with you. So feel free to just slide on into my DMs, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, wherever you find me. And I look forward to connecting.
Love it. Love that. Thank you so much, Tammey. You know what I love is that we are on Zoom often, right? For a lot of our programs. And so we naturally do this. I saw Julia clapping and Laurie clapping. And it's so funny. Like, I don't think that's like outside of FemCity, I've never seen so many people, but we're so used to doing it for each other, like to do this and to do this. And then Aaron's got the snaps and then we do the heart shape. So if you're watching us and wondering why we're doing all that, it's because that's what we do behind the scenes on all of our FemCity programs. It's just kind of like now we just do it all the time. I don't know if we're going to do it in real life when we start meeting in real life, if we'll kind of, I'm starting to do that now. Like when someone says something, I'm like this, and like, why are you doing that? You're right in front of me. Like, yeah, I know, but I can't help it. So, Laurie, your final tip, advice, and how can femmes find you, learn more about the work you're doing in this world?
You could call that the Zoom femme lingo, maybe, all the hearts and, building on what both Tammey and Julia have said, it's really this connecting in, I've used the phrase resting in yourself. So finding practices that help us just rest in ourselves whatever part of us that is, and then just extend out from there. And when I say practices, I really mean find your regular daily practices to connect in. For me, it's running, it's yoga, gardening, baking. That's a good one. Sometimes middle of the night. I don't fret when I wake up. I solve a problem. It's a good thinking time. And I build that in. If I know that I have to prepare something or speak or write, I make notes and then I leave it and let it rest. And then I go do one of these things. Often running is really good, my yoga mat too, but especially running. And then it seems to all fall into place and flow out. So find the ways, meditation, whatever it is that helps you connect in, feel your best self, be resting in yourself, and then express yourself in who you're being and what you're doing from that place. You can find me, the easiest place to find me is on my website, lauriehunt.com. There's connections to all my social media and of course on FemCity as well, but you can find all the links and connections at lauriehunt.com.
Thank you so much. Beautiful, beautiful. And Sina says, what a great group every time. We love the love. Thank you so much for sending us love, Sina. And let's go to Julia. Julia, your final tip, and how can femmes find you to learn more about the work you're doing in this world?
Okay, so there's two tips that I like to give, and they're almost opposites of each other. The first one is when something sounds like a lot of fun and you really want to do it, just go for it. Don't overanalyze it. Just go for it and do it. When you get lost and you find yourself just kind of spinning and not feeling good, just a nice deep breath. And with some practice, you can almost do it in the one deep breath to just get yourself centered. And then things start flowing again and you can start, making those more intuitive decisions. So those are my two last final tips that are my favorite and what have gotten me through starting my business. But you can find me here at FemCity. I'm on the global group. And you can find me in the directory. But I also love to hang out on Instagram. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn, and I think I just posted something on Tumblr the other day for the first time in I don't know how long. But Instagram is where my favorite place to hang out, and you can just find me there under Julia Mae with an E Hunt.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And you can see they're painting our house behind me. Steve was walking in and out. The DHL person was there. That's actually Madeleine. It's like so there's like all sorts of people behind. So it's authenticity, right? I'm showing up in my authenticity state. We have a lot of people working in the house today, which is really great. It means we're getting closer and closer to finishing this project. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining me today. This was a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time today to share your wisdom with us. And for those that have never tried FemCity, we invite you to sign up for free. It's a free 30-day trial. You can head over to femcity.com. It is the best time to join FemCity, actually, because we have our summer sale going on. So you lock in at the $9.99 rate. Thank you so much. Again, if you are watching this later on, feel free to reach out to any of us, comment, tag us, and we can't wait to hear your success. Let us know how these tips helped you. And we will see you guys back here next week. Mwah! Bye.